Greetings from Snaptech, everybody. In this video, we're going to show you an in-depth comparison between the new Moto X and Nexus 5. The reason why we compare these two is that both run very similar software. One runs pure Android while the other a near-stock version of Android. Now, we see a lot of videos flying around on YouTube teaching how to run stock Android on any device without rooting. We just want to clear the air a little bit around it. So basically what they're doing is installing the Google Now launcher. However, simply doing that doesn't give you a stock Android. If that were the case, what was there ever a need for Nexus lineup? Anyway, back to Android on Moto X. We'll take a deep look at the changes Motorola have done, and if that takes away the pure Android experience. So this video is more aimed at finding that answer and help you decide if the new Moto can fill in if you were to upgrade from the Nexus 5 but find the 6 nothing short of a stockpile of monstrosity. Okay, so let's get on with it. We'll place the two contenders alongside each other and execute similar commands on both of them and show you if the software reacts in a similar way or if Motorola have fiddled around with it. Of course, they have made changes, but they seem to be complementary changes instead of changes to the core of Android, like changing the launch behavior of apps or writing different classes for animations. See for yourself what Motorola's Senior Vice President of Software Engineering, Steve Horowitz, had to say when asked on Motorola's take on the operating system. He says, rather than trying to improve Android or compete with its functions, we see our job as complementing it, with great design experiences like Moto Voice, Moto Display, and Moto Assist. We've proven that our approach has fundamental and sustainable advantages over other Android OEMs, such as performance advantages and ability to get upgrades out quickly. These things really matter to people. The fact that we're the only company with this strategy also serves as a point of differentiation. Our pure Android approach to software results in an end-user experience that is faster, simpler, and more robust than ever. It also allows us to deliver important OS software updates with new enhancements, security fixes, and functionality faster than anyone else in the industry by a huge margin. Okay, so those are just words. Let's put the Moto X and the Nexus through comparison tests to find out if these claims are indeed true. We'll start with the Dialer app, as first and foremost, a phone is used to make phone calls, and Dialer is probably the most used app. We'll clear all the recent apps first, and then we launch the app on Moto X and Nexus 5. As you can see, both launch very smoothly and in very quick time. We try again. Now that the app is in the random memory, it'll launch even faster as it doesn't require initialization. So, no fiddling around here. Identical app on both, same behavior, very smooth and fast. Next up, we've got the Chrome app. As you can see, it takes a split second before launching. We're noticing this after the recent update to Chrome, and for some reason, it has this slight delay when it launches for the first time. We're pretty sure it'll be fixed in time for the next update. Now let's browse to a website. Both launch the website at the same time and complete rendering the HTML exactly at the same time. Now there could be a fraction here and there, as they run on the same Wi-Fi network, and at times the packets received by each device may not be exactly the same. In this case, it's important to look for trends. Also, it's important to know the behavior, as a lot of OEM-related changes are reflected in the behavior of apps. But here, it looks Motorola were happy to leave the operating system the way it is, at least up until now. Next up, the Hangouts app. There we go, and both launch in a similar way. Of course, the Moto has no messages, while Nexus, being our daily driver, has loads of them. But still exactly the same behavior and speed. Let's try multitasking, because this is where the system extracts a lot of juice out of the CPU, as it needs to get the state of all apps in the memory and preload them so that as the user taps on an app, it is brought to life immediately. Do this on Xperia Z3 and it'll be like, what just happened? It reacts as if it's caught off guard, despite having the Snapdragon 801 chipset. So obviously Sony has made a mess there, and unfortunately we don't have the footage at this point, otherwise you could see exactly what we're talking about. Okay, so there we go. Hitting the multitask button, both launch again in a very similar way. So, no difference at all. Next up, let's play with these contacts and go deeper and see if there is any treatment from Motorola. Many manufacturers like to make sweeping changes here, and oftentimes their approach is not as clean and simple as that of Google's. But here we see Motorola haven't tinkered with anything thus far. They're sticking to their word, and that makes the performance super fast and smooth on the Moto X. Now, for the notification pull down with two fingers, and there we have it. Exactly the same. Next up, the Twitter app. They will launch it. Pretty identical launch, initialization, and render. Let's try once more, and we get the same results. Now, removing it from the memory, we have the same animation, same sort of execution. So far so good. Trying the Google Plus app on both. Very similar on both. There is Seb and Daniel with the American legend Mario Andretti ahead of the US Grand Prix. The scrolling behavior is also just the way it is on the Moto X as it is on the Nexus 5, although initially we felt it stuttered a bit more on the Moto. But after extensively testing it, we were sure it's exactly the same. It probably appears a bit more on the Moto due to the larger display, and to those of you wondering why it stutters at all, it's because it's retrieving the content for you as you scroll. It works asynchronously, which is it renders as you request for the content. If it were to load all of it at once, it'll be ages before you saw anything at all. Let's show you how sharp both of them can render the text. Obviously, a lot of it is down to the kind of text and the size of it. Now, we find fonts used in Google's Play Store very light and sharp. It is with text this light and thin that pixelation is exposed, so let's see which one gets this sharper. And now that the Play Store is up, the text certainly looks a bit sharper on the Nexus. We'll talk about this in a bit, so hang on tight. Okay, now for the final app test, the Facebook app. How can we forget that? Where is it? Okay, there it is. So we're going to tap on it exactly the same time, and it's taking a while to load. You can see Wi-Fi signals dropping a bit. Okay, again, both load at exactly the same time. Very identical behavior. A bit slow due to low signals, but still very smooth. Let's share a picture on Google+. Yep, there's one. Beautiful picture in front of Kaaba in Makkah. Sharing that on Google+, and both should get the job done. Now, one thing to note on the Moto X is that when you insert your SIM card for the first time, you're going to notice this weird network provider name on the left of the status bar. That's really annoying to many as it takes away vital space for notifications, and only after a few of them you see that irritating plus sign on top. So to turn it off, just go to Settings, Mobile Networks, and uncheck Show Mobile Network option. We're not sure what was the motive behind this, but as far as we understand, this is only limited to Moto X and not found on the Moto G second generation. Now this is a classic example of manufacturers fiddling with Android. Changes like this can affect the behavior of the system and disrupt the user experience or the consistency of the experience. However, thankfully this isn't too major, and by unchecking that option, the mobile network, your status bar looks just like the one on Nexus. Next up, let's go to Settings and show you how it looks inside. This is again where a lot of changes are carried out by manufacturers. Check out this on HTC, Sony, LG, or Samsung, and you'll see a complete redesign in the interface. But Motorola have left it the way it is. Let's head to developer settings. You can obviously see here that we like to run our devices on Arc Runtime instead of Dalvik, as the performance gains are substantial. We're running the Nova launcher with Moonshine Icon Pack. Let's show you the Google Now launcher. Okay, there it is. Here, although Motorola haven't made any changes to the software, but due to the 5.2-inch larger display compared to the Nexus 5, the icons look larger. For instance, we measured the Facebook icon on the Nexus 5, and it came in at 9 by 9 millimeters, while it measures 11 by 11 millimeters on the Moto X. In a nutshell, the difference is noticeable to the trained eye. They're already enlarged in Google Now Launcher, and they look a bit too large on the X. Now, the reason for that is that the resolution is same on both, 1920 by 1080 Full HD. However, the screen size is smaller on the Nexus. Now, since you have the same resolution to play with, you end up having everything a bit larger on the X. We wish they stuck to their guns and kept a 5-inch display instead of 5.2, as it leads to loss of pixels. Now, technically, the pixel density on the Moto X is 424 per inch compared to 445 on the Nexus, and you'd be wondering how 21 pixels would matter, but we're talking about 21 pixels per inch. Even diagonally, the screen measures 5.2 inches, which translates to 109 pixels lost. If we calculate the area of the screen, it comes out to 12.78 inches, with the width being approximately 2.75 inches and the height being 4.65 inches. So that's a total of around 270 pixels lost against the Nexus 5. Plus, the panel used on the Moto X is AMOLED and not LCD, with a diamond matrix pen tile that we have been seeing forever on Galaxy range of Samsung devices. Now, of course, that brings great viewing angles and super high contrast, but doesn't look as sharp as other 1080p devices on the market. Many of you won't even notice, but to the trained eye, the difference is pretty much there. Many say anything over 320 pixels can't be seen by the human eye, but that's just BS. Just the other day, we spent some time with the iPhone 6 Plus that has a pixel density of 401, but if you know where to look for, you can certainly spot tiny pixelation, and the 6 Plus does show some of it. But all in all, the display on the Moto X is not bad. It's just poorly calibrated. It has very high concentration of colors, overblown really, which is probably attractive to a normal user, but to us, that's not natural at all. The glass, however, on top of the Moto X is simply beautiful. It's curved around the edges, something we're seeing on a lot of devices lately, like the new iPhones or Galaxy Note 4. Right, time for some conclusions. It's interesting to know that the Moto X has a few things going its way. Firstly, it runs on Snapdragon 801 chipset, while the Nexus runs on the older 800 chipset. But there isn't a massive difference in performance. That's due to 801 probably not bringing extra performance but improving efficiency, which means the device doesn't heat up and gives better battery life. Other than that, the Moto X has a 13 megapixel shooter, while the Nexus has an 8 megapixel shooter. The body on the X is a lot more premium, with aluminum frame that is designed beautifully. The body gets thinner towards the edges and thicker in the middle, giving it a rounded back, which gives a great feeling when holding it. That being said, aluminum does make it a bit slippery, but it's perfectly manageable, although you need to be careful. The speaker is very good on the X, although it doesn't have the dual speaker setup that its sibling the Moto G has, but the one it does have gives rich, bassier sound. The one on Nexus? That's just a formality. Plus, the Moto X runs a very clean version of Android. We don't even like to call it newer stock. In our opinion, it is stock, as it doesn't change anything. All additional features on the X are complementary and doesn't change anything in Android. So basically, it's just a spiced up version of vanilla Android. That being said, the screen is the biggest disappointment we felt with the Moto X. Now, don't get us wrong here, it's a lovely AMOLED panel, but to purists, it's not very appealing. The colors are extremely saturated, too much for our liking, but probably appealing to casual buyers. But AMOLEDs help a lot with active display features on the Moto X. As you wave your hand 6 inches from the screen, it lights up select pixels only to show you time and notifications, which is extremely useful feature. It becomes addictive once you get used to it. It is better than the double tap feature we've come to see on LG and HTC devices, as they don't always work. The tap needs to have a certain pressure to register and light up the display. Not with the Moto X, it works every single time, and lighting up select pixels only instead of complete display has a lot of advantages in relation to battery saving. But the 5.2-inch display means loss of vital pixels, and with no increase in resolution, that's a downer. Everything shows up a bit larger and not necessarily better. The quality of content takes a hit, although nothing major, but in today's world when we're all after specs and devices breaking 500 ppi barrier, a step backwards isn't a smart idea. The width of the Moto X is more than the Nexus, which is a con, and the speaker for calls isn't very good either. Callers reported we sounded better when calling with Nexus, while we felt callers sounded better when we attended calls on the Nexus. It means the mic and the speaker on the Moto are not as good as LG manufactured Nexus 5. So the conclusion is that the Moto X can fill in if you wish to upgrade from the Nexus 5 but find the new Nexus 6 a little too big to carry around. The Nexus 6 is made by Motorola and ironically has many similarities with the Moto X. It adopts the same design language and has an AMOLED panel. It also has the famous dimple. So in a way, the Moto X is a hybrid Nexus since the software experience it delivers is the closest you can get on a non-Nexus device. However, it's important to note that the Nexus 5 is still available and it is still a top-notch device at a very competitive price. And so there you have it. Thank you very much for watching our video. Please hit that like button to appreciate this video and don't forget to subscribe and be part of a strong 300 plus subscribers. Until next time, peace.